a PhD program at the National University in Mexico, focused on a discipline that is called Ecology of Infectious Diseases and One Health, pretty much. We are going to be talking about the focus of this discipline a little bit deeper during the presentation. But back in those years, I met Sandra. Sandra and I we were working pretty much with the same viruses in the same family of viruses of wildlife, but I was working with marine mammals and she was working with big cats. So Sandra, please let us know you better and know about your experience and expertise, please.
Okay, hello. Thank you so much for having me, and it's a great honor for me to be here. And thank you also to Natural Habitat for hosting this very interesting topic that we want to talk to you about. My name is Sandra. I was also born and raised in Mexico City. I still live here in the city, but I used to travel a lot because I always wanted to become a veterinarian. I've always had cats, and those are like my first love. So I'm gonna talk to you a lot about cats today. But also I love wildlife, so I always wanted to work with wild animals in their habitats. And I graduated from vet school in 2005, and I started just pursuing this career of wildlife veterinarian in the field. So I started just getting in touch with biologists working here in Mexico with jaguars, and I got to work in different places in the Yucatan Peninsula near very famous hotspots for vacation like Cancun and Playa del Carmen and Tulum, and in natural reserves in that area. So I got to study jaguars for about 10 years. And I was also doing health studies of these animals because we were actually did a master's degree on the possible transmission of distemper virus between domestic dogs and jaguars. So I did a lot of also study of infectious diseases like Lilia was talking about. We were studying the same family of viruses. And then after many years working here in Mexico, especially with jaguars and wild felines, but also other species, I moved to Africa. I lived in Malawi since 2019, and then I had to come back because of the pandemic. But I was working in also studying infectious diseases from animals, transmitted from animals to humans, and this interaction between wildlife and pets. And it was my dream come true going to Malawi and working there at least for a little while, and I hope I can go back again sometime. But that's pretty much what I've been doing. I've been dedicated to studying wildlife diseases and cats.
Great, thank you so much for sharing all your expertise. So let's start with this presentation. The idea of this presentation is sharing some tips for you guys to be a very responsible owner of your pets. We are not here to criticize anyone. We are just trying to, I know that everyone here loves wildlife, so we are trying to protect both. So that's pretty much the idea of this webinar. And before starting, sometimes my connection is very unstable, so if it's necessary, probably I'm going to turn off my camera. Let's cross our fingers. That doesn't need to be happening, but let's start, Sandra. So next slide.
Perfect. So we'll start. Yeah, so sorry, that was like us, our introduction.
Oh, yeah, that was our introduction slide. Very good.
Okay, well, you can see it's a pretty landscape. Okay, so yes. As Lilia said, today we're going to talk to you about, it's a complicated issue between pets and wildlife because we love our pets and we also love wildlife. And that's why we go to these amazing places on Earth where we can watch these amazing species, right? Like we go to the sea to see the whales and manta rays and all these beautiful species. And also we go to these places that we are expecting only to see wildlife, right? Like we're expecting to see only like, you know, lions and jaguars and all these beautiful species. But then we find out that there's also some dogs and cats in that area. And we're going to talk about that and then as Lilia said, we're going to tell you what you can do so that those animals do not affect wildlife. Okay, so this is a picture. Actually, Lilia, you should talk about this. This is where you live in Chile.
Yes, actually, the guy that you can see on the picture is my husband. We were walking in the city of Valdivia, and it was weekend. We just decided to walk around the city, and we visited the botanical garden of the university in there. So it's a beautiful place surrounded by huge trees. It was amazing. And suddenly we have one dog following us, then two, then three, then a lot of them following us all over the place. So this is the kind of a scenario that we are trying to avoid, mainly when you have when you have wildlife around. Of course, this is not the ideal pet ownership, because these dogs, as you can see, are street dogs. You don't see the owners around, and no one that is taking care of them. So that's one of the biggest problems, not only here in Mexico. It's also a very big problem around the world. So as you can see in the next slide, you want to talk about the numbers, Sandra?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, basically this is there's a lot of statistics around about the amount of dogs and cats that we have in our homes. And we know that, there are other types of species of pets that are now famous or popular, but the most popular ones are dogs and cats. And these are the numbers. I think this was a poll that was done in 2017 or something. It's not so actual, but what we can see here is that there's like there's millions of these animals in our homes, right? We love dogs, we love cats, and Mexico was not included in here, so we wanted just to point an arrow in here because we don't have such a big population as in the USA and China, for example. Mexico has a population of around 18 million dogs, and in the talking about cats, the numbers are around 5 million cats, and but unfortunately, not all of these animals have homes. And also, I wanted to point out something that happened during this pandemic, is that because we were all locked down in our homes, a lot of people started adopting or buying pets and cats to keep them company, of course, because we were going through such a hard time, and probably these numbers have increased. But I also wanted to point out that even though these are very popular animals that we share our homes with, actually there are a lot of millions of dogs and cats worldwide. It's close to 600 to 700 millions of these animals, but only 30% of them have a home. This means that most of these animals that we count are actually stray, or they're living in the streets or living in rural areas. So this is not so good for them or for us and for wildlife, and we're going to talk about that. And this causes a lot of issues around this, the number of animals that are worldwide, because they reproduce really fast. They have really high reproduction rates. So this means that, we just have to do the math. So if one cat has 3 litters a year, then count that for like an average of 10 years that a cat can live. And then we multiply that for the amount that a female dog can have 2 litters a year, then and an average of like 5 to 10 puppies, depending on the breed, then we have a big number of animals that are breeding constantly. And also another issue is that most of this, and this happens worldwide, this is not specific to any single country. I've traveled enough to know that we see dogs and cats everywhere in the streets. And sometimes you don't see it in them in the streets, but you know that there are many animals that don't have a caregiver. So what happens is that these animals that you see, these are pictures that I took when I was traveling and working in the Yucatan Peninsula in small towns. And these animals are not necessarily stray. They do have an owner. They have someone to take care of them. Or, sometimes it's called an owner, but basically someone who's responsible for them. But what happens is that they are kept outside. And this causes a lot of problems for them because they are at risk of suffering of many accidents and diseases, and just they're not going to live as long as one of our pets that we keep at home. So,
yes, because some people sometimes they think that only giving them food is to be a responsible owner. That's correct?
Exactly. Yeah, like you don't need to do much, just, you know, feed them once in a while, see that they're out there, but actually it's not so good that they're out there.
Of course.
So, and like I said, this picture on the left, this is a picture of actually in a small town that is near one of the biggest reserves in Mexico. It's called the Kalakmal Biosphere Reserve in the state of Campeche on the border with Guatemala. So there are jaguars and lions and a lot of other wild animals that actually are living right next to them. So this is why, and of course, I'm talking this about an extreme, right? Like this is right next to, they're neighbors to a natural reserve. But this also happens in the cities because cities are consuming the green spaces, right? But we have some islands of still green spaces like big parks. You know, we have Central Park in New York, we have Chapultepec Park in Mexico City. So these are still sanctuaries for wildlife. So it's not necessarily, you don't need to be near a natural reserve to have an interaction with wildlife. So, and this is what we're talking about. Exactly, these are patches of still a little bit of forest, but the city is eating it up. So these are the places that are concerning for us as biologists and veterinarians, because this causes a lot of issues for nature in general, right? So this is causing bad negative effects on the ecosystems, on the water resources, on the forest resources, and especially on biodiversity, because we're talking about a lot of species that have a home in here, and it's a very like the web of life, right? Like not only the food chain, but we're talking about like how a bird has a specific role in this ecosystem, and if they don't have where to nest, they don't have what to eat, it affects the whole ecosystem. So, and this is where our pets are getting really close in contact with wildlife.
Yeah. So definitely the kind of things that we want to avoid. If we are living on a place with natural resources around, so the advice is to start to being more aware of the possible interactions between our pets and wildlife. That's correct?
Exactly. And for example, like what I was talking about, how you don't need to be near a natural reserve to have this effect on, you know, having your pets come in close contact with wildlife. This little space here, it's Playa del Carmen. It's a very known destination. And all that you can see green is not a natural reserve per se, but this is still a forested area, like a very conserved area of, you know, with full of trees and cenotes, all this very delicate ecosystem. And there's jaguars around here, jaguars and pumas and migratory birds. So there's a lot of biodiversity living here. And then we are expanding these cities. So this is where this contact happens more, and it causes more negative effects. But like I said, we don't have to live in a natural reserve so that this contact happens, and we have to also take care of the species that we have in our backyards even, right? Like if you have a backyard, you can have a lot of birds visiting. So this is, we just wanted to point to where this close contact is happening. So, and this is also a worldwide problem. Like I said, this is not something that happens just in a specific place on Earth. This is happening worldwide. And this is, for example, an article, research that was done to study the impact of cats in islands. We know that cats are everywhere. And also, we know that dogs are everywhere. And you know why this is happening? Because we are everywhere. Human settlements are in all these places. And whenever it's said a lot that whenever we go to a certain place, we bring our animals with us, either if it's cows or sheep or goats or dogs and cats. So this is why this is a worldwide problem. But what happens here is that these cats are actually affecting these animals, affecting mammals, affecting bird species and reptiles. So we need to understand the scope of the problem. This is not something that just happens in my country, for example, but also if I don't see it happening with my cats or dogs, it doesn't mean that it's not happening. So Lilia, do you want to talk about this, of the impacts of dogs on wildlife?
Yes, of course. So one of the most important things is that we have to be aware of that in each contact between our pets and wildlife could have a lot of different consequences that sometimes even veterinarians or biologists are not very much aware of what could happen. And basically, we are experiencing one of the consequences of those kind of extraordinary interactions or not natural interactions among wildlife and pets. For example, in this kind of in this chart, we can see numbers of how the cats can be predating different kinds or different groups of animals, but also the impact. We can see that they can be taking animals, so they are predating other species. Like Sandra was saying, they can, even when you're living on the city, they can be taking or predating birds or lizards that are on your backyard. They can create some disturbance on the populations, even when they are not eating the animals per se. They can be, well, interrupting or disrupting the natural interactions of a population. They can be transmitting diseases, as I was mentioning, the pandemia or the zoonosis that we are living nowadays, and for a year and a half, pretty much. Also, they can be competing for the same resources. That means if, for example, I don't know, if a bear eats a very particular animal in the woods and the dogs start to go into those woods, they can start competing for the same prey. And of course, we have also hybridation problems. That means that we can start pushing a little bit these species barriers and creating new ones, even when that's in the nature without our hand, probably never happened. So those are the kind of different impacts that we can create, and we are going to be seeing some of them with more detail.
Right. Thank you. And so, like I said, these charts and maps that we're showing you are from articles that have studied this phenomenon, right? What is the negative impact of dogs and cats on wildlife? And as you can see, these little dogs in here, this shows where there are dog wildlife interactions. But of course, this is not only, you know, what we were noting right now, that there's none in Mexico, but this happens here too. So of course, this is something that's happening everywhere, and we need to, you know, we're going to talk to you specifically about two specific ways that there are negative interactions with wildlife. So one of them, as Lilia was saying, is predation. Predation is basically domestic dogs and cats stalking and hunting wildlife to eat it. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it with cats in about 2 slides. But this is something that we see very commonly, and unfortunately, is something that we see as something that's not problematic, because we see it as it's our cats and it's their instinct and they should do that. But this is not necessarily true. But this is one of the main issues of, or the many ways that the most important ways that cats can affect negatively wildlife, and because cats are very good hunters, and I'm going to tell you why. But I would like so we have different experiences, Lilia and me, with this. I'm going to tell you more about cats, but Lilia lived a very specific, saw a very specific interaction of dogs with wildlife when she was living in Chile. If you want to tell us about it. Let me see.
Yeah, it was pretty much the same. You have to make the click on the video, but
oh, sorry.
Yeah, as I was saying. What happened?
I don't know
if
why.
it doesn't.
Okay.
Well, don't worry.
I don't.
In the video, you can. It's with the picture. Is pretty much you can have the whole idea. After finishing our walking through the botanical garden, we start going back home, and we saw that as you can see in the platform, those are sea lions that are all the time in there, and in the water you have one sea lion. Unfortunately, you cannot see very clearly in that picture, but it's on the right hand side of the platform, and it's in the water. You can see almost in the water the first dog and then the other ones around. They were barking all the time, and they are harassing the sea lions. You can see the ones on the platform like very relaxed, and they were resting or sleeping, but the other one that was on the water, I could say that it was the biggest male of that group, so probably he was trying to defend the rest of the pod, and he was facing the dogs. Fortunately, that day, we didn't see an incident between the sea lions and the dogs. But as you can see, the platform is in a very reachable distance from a dog just to be jumping in there. And they are going to start probably chasing the sea lions. So it could be really stressing for these animals and for everybody, just hearing the dogs barking all the time. So these kind of interactions are not natural. It's happening basically because we are taking our dogs without a leash, or we are just opening the door to the dog and opening back at nights when they just come up to ask for food. So if these animals are not, or they do not have an owner or a house, so these kind of interactions could be really a problem, and we are going to see why probably in the next slide.
Exactly.
It's a shame.
So yeah, we couldn't load the video, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah.
so now I'm gonna just take a little parenthesis to tell you why cats are good hunters. So I am a cat person, a cat owner. I've always had cats. I'm a rare veterinarian that has never owned a dog. So I'm a cat person, full and full. But also, I started studying a cat lady. Yeah, I'm total cat lady, and I love them, of course. So one of the things that I've been studying cat behavior to become a cat behaviorist, and one of the things that I've noticed is that we actually do not understand cats as well as we think. We know they're cute, and sometimes we get annoyed at some of the things that they do because they don't do what we want to. But one of the reasons is because they're like a mix between a domestic animal that still has like a mind of a wild cat. Pretty much that's what I would like for you to take away with this, is that cats are a domesticated species, but their history and the way that they've been domesticated or self-domesticated has not been the same as with dogs. And also it hasn't been as long as with dogs. So cats haven't been living with us for as long as dogs. But also, as you can see on the left, this is the wild ancestor of domestic cats. It's called Felis sylvestris libica. They actually still live in Africa. They're a wildlife species. They have their own ecological niche, and they hunt to survive because they're wildcats. And the one on the right, that's my cat Milo. He's a domestic pur ball. And so as you can see, they're not so different. You could totally say that this one on the left is a stray cat that you can see on the street. And actually they're not. So what happens is that domestic cats have not been so changed genetically or modified, like even in their, like the way that they look. So also one of the things why, the main reason why cats are good hunters is because it was beneficial for humans for so long that cats were good hunters. And it was a mutual benefit because cats used to stay close to human settlements where they could feed from the mice on the grains and grain storage and the harvests. And of course, that was a very good thing for us as humans, that we had a little cute cat that was taking care of all these animals that were eating our food. So exactly, very cute biological control. But also, this is something that we're still taking advantage of nowadays. Actually, I don't know if you heard it in the news, but I think it happened in Chicago this year, a few months ago, that it was like this overcrowding of rats in the city, and they had cats to take care of them. So cats hunt because it's still in their instincts, and because they haven't evolved to not do that, to not hunt. So, and also it's important, it's a very important trait of their behavior. So they do need to express this hunting behavior, but they do not need to eat wildlife. And also eating wildlife has a lot of bad consequences for our cats. But I really wanted to clarify that cats are not bad for hunting. It's just what they have been doing for so many years because it has been beneficial for us as humans. So I want to talk now about like some of the consequences of this, because many people think that, oh, it's, you know, it's their instinct, it's okay that they hunt wildlife because it's what they should do, but actually it's not, because our pets or cats will be in danger of getting injured severely, or maybe getting sick, or getting just, you know, they're getting not only sick from an injury, but also they could be they could eat an animal that has an infectious disease that could be transmitted to our cat. So what you see here is, I'm sorry about the blurry picture. It was taken from a video. I think it was done it was taken in Brazil or something, because I heard that they were speaking Portuguese. But basically, this could be a snake species that could harm our cat. So it's not okay that this cat is eating this snake. And also that could happen with many other animals. So the consequences for our cats eating wildlife are not any good for them. So, and they don't, and the good thing, the good news that we're going to tell you a little bit further into the presentation is that they do not need to go out, and they do not need to eat wildlife to have that, to get to feel good about hunting and have that behavior fulfilled. So, sorry, you want to tell more about it, Lilia?
Well, it's very hard because some people think that when cats are grabbing any other animals, for example, birds mainly, the people always see it as a present, because your cat thinks that it's pretty much its responsibility to bring food to you, so they are giving you presents, and then you can eat them, right? But I think it's a very romantic way to try to just continuing with these kind of practices instead of doing something to avoid them. Because even when when they are having, for example, a pigeon, we know that it's quite common on the cities, but they have a lot of a huge population of those kind of birds. It's not natural, and it's not good, because as Sandra was saying, we are going to start seeing the different consequences, mainly with zoonosis or any other diseases. So yeah, it's basically that. It's quite dangerous too, right?
Exactly. And also why I want to point out the difference between cats and dogs in hunting, it's because, so this is something that's ingrained into their brains, right? Like they have this hunting kick, to so to speak. And so not only they need to express this behavior, but also this is not a behavior that's specific for like feral or stray cats. This is in any domestic cat. So even if I have my cat indoors and they've never gone outside and they never hunt any animal, they will have that instinct. And the main difference with dogs is that dogs do not need to hunt if they're provided with enough resources, and especially food. So that's something very specific that has been studied in many places, where you can see that the level of care that we provide to our pets, so even if we live in the middle of nowhere and we have jaguars as neighbors, if we provide adequate care for our pets, for our cats and dogs, they do not need to hunt. So that's something that I really wanted to point out. So now we're going to tell you about the other important aspect, that's the infectious diseases. Sorry, you wanted to tell something?
No, that was very important.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that maybe some of you have heard this term of One Health. So basically, One Health is an approach that tries to integrate the health of the environment, human health, and animal health, including wildlife and domestic animals. And this is very important because for a few years we've done, like actually when Lilia and I were studying our postgrad studies, we started to hear this term recently But then this is something that's been going around, and before it was called conservation medicine. And it was trying to do this connection between, as veterinarians, for example, we're not only studying animals and animal health. We have to also see what's going around this species, right? So we're talking about the environment, and we're also talking about the interaction with humans. And this is something that we're going to see more often now because of the pandemic that we're going through right now. And because this is all interconnected. The health of the environment is interconnected with our health and with our well-being and with animals. Not only the wild animals, but also the animals that keep coming to us. So as we're studying infectious diseases, for example, what Lilia and I were doing, that we were studying the diseases that were affecting marine mammals in the case of Lilia, and jaguars in my case, then it's not only about studying the direct effects of that disease in this species. We also have to see what's causing them and what are the factors that are causing this disease to go around, and where is this disease coming from. So, and that's actually, you know, this is a chart that from an article that they were studying what are the interactions of the SARS-CoV-2, the virus that's causing COVID-19, and what are the species that are involved in this. So we're going to tell you about Sonatic Diseases if you've heard it, if you haven't heard it enough in the news for this year and a half. But Sonatic Diseases are diseases that are transmitted between animals to humans. But there's also diseases that can be transmitted the other way around. For example, with primates that are so taxonomically similar to us, to humans, actually a very mild flu from us can actually kill a gorilla. That's why it's very important that if you go trekking to see gorillas, you are not sick. So this goes this goes both ways, right? Like it's animals that can transmit diseases to us, but also we can transmit diseases to them. So Lilia, you want to tell us a little bit about this COVID?
The COVID?
Yeah,
No, I
yeah,
don't
that's
want to
kind of
talk
like the
about COVID.
interactions. Right, I know we don't want to talk about it, but basically, yeah. So this is a little bit of the interactions of
How it
diseases
works.
in with the different species of animals and with us. So there, I think it's just really interesting to see this, not only as for example, now we're focusing on COVID and these infectious diseases, right? Because they're affecting a certain species. Either they're affecting human health, they're affecting wildlife, or they're affecting dogs. So I mean, honestly, it's like if COVID-19 was only affecting a certain species, so it was only affecting an animal species, I'm gonna say chicken, just randomly, this wouldn't be such a worldwide problem, right? Because it was only in a species. But then we also, as infectious disease specialists, we have to look into why is this disease happening to these species, right? But we don't need to see it apart like that. We need to see it in a more integrated way. So I'm going to tell you about how this approach of One Health is helping actually to provide solution to these diseases that are affecting different species. So most of you have heard about rabies. It's one of the most common diseases and most studied diseases, actually. We've been studying it for more than 100 years. And again, it's a zoonotic disease that is transmitted from animals to humans. It has a worldwide prevalence. It happens everywhere in the world. There's just a few countries or regions in the world where it's not prevalent, but also it hasn't been controlled. It causes around an average of 59,000 human deaths every year in the countries where it's not controlled. So the case in Mexico is that it's very interesting because our government set up a vaccination campaign nationwide in the 90s. So basically there's free vaccination twice a year for every cat and dog, and it's done for free, and it's done in every state of Mexico. And thanks to this approach of vaccinating cats and dogs, regardless if they have someone to take care of them or not, so actually stray animals are vaccinated too, Mexico was declared free of rabies transmitted by dogs 2 years ago in 2019. And this doesn't mean that we have to stop vaccinating dogs. This is why it was successful. And we have to keep doing it because this is the way that we got the so famous herd immunity. But what happens when we vaccinate dogs? So we should be, so because this is a disease that's affecting humans, we should be focusing on attention to humans, right? But if this disease is being transmitted by dogs biting humans, then if we control it in the dogs, actually this has many benefits. So this has benefits for the dogs and cats because they're not getting sick by rabies. It provides benefits to humans because it's not infecting humans, it's not causing human deaths. But also this has the protection for wildlife because if a dog has an encounter with a jaguar, for example, they're not going to get rabies from that dog. And this is very important. So I wanted to show you how this One Health approach can be applied to solve many issues at the same time. And so this was the case in Mexico. Now I'm going to tell you about what's happening in another country where this is not handled so well. So in India, it's one of the hotspots of rabies. There's a lot of, like, thousands of cases a year. It's a country where people still die of rabies, and many other countries that still haven't been able to control rabies transmission. And also what's happening, this article was published a few years ago, and we were very surprised because this is not something that we want to, this is not beneficial as it's been told, right? So it's been said that leopards, because leopards eat stray dogs, they're providing benefits to humans because they're reducing dog bite incidents. And also because leopards are taking care of the dogs, the stray dogs, this is saving $18,000 per year in dog management costs for the government. And actually this is not so good because if there's a high incidence of rabies in these dogs, then these leopards are eating these dogs with rabies. And even though it may seem like it's a benefit for humans, actually it's not good for leopards. And it's not good for dogs because, you know, still it's not the right way. We would like, leopards are not the ones that should be taking care of these dogs, right?
Yeah, that's a very serious problem. I didn't know about it. And it's interesting how the change of how you treat a problem could have such a big difference on the results. It would be interesting to know why do they think that it's pretty much a benefit? Because the other way around, they are going to be having then other species in wildlife with transmitting rabies. So it's quite complicated, the situation in here.
Exactly, and also because rabies is that disease that affects many other species of wildlife. It doesn't affect just like carnivores or dogs or cats. So that's why you can see, like, this is not just us trying to tell you that it's better to vaccinate dogs than to treat humans. It doesn't have to be this way. What we're trying to show is that having an impact on one of the sources of the problem, that's the dogs that are getting infected by rabies, is actually having many benefits outside of just you know, providing protection for dogs. And this is something that we should look more into. So yeah, so this is an amazing organization that I was working with in Malawi called Mission Rabies, that they're basically doing this, providing free vaccination to dogs and cats in these countries. They work specifically, I think now they work in more countries, but they work in India and in Malawi, and they're doing an amazing job. So
Right.
now I'm going to tell you about the disease that the virus that Lily and I have been working on. So Canine Distemper virus, many of you may have heard of it. It was considered only a dog disease. It may have affected some other carnivore species like ferrets, but for many, many years, we thought it was only a problem of dogs, right? Like, and it's a very contagious virus. So then what started happening in the 90s is that we started seeing lions and tigers and other wild felines getting sick from this virus in captivity, first in the US. Then what happened a few years later in 1994 is that we saw a total outbreak of this disease in the wild lion population in the Serengeti. And this started just blaring all the alarms, like, what is going on? Like, why is this virus that belongs to dogs affecting lions? And then we started seeing this disease in tigers in Siberia, in very, very remote areas of the world with a very endangered species. Amur tigers are some of the most endangered cats. And then when we started getting worried about this, we started doing some research to try to see if this virus was also present in jaguars in America. There's been some studies in Brazil and in Costa Rica, and I did my master's thesis on this. What I can tell you is that I didn't find any jaguar that was positive to distemper, and we haven't for a few years, like with other research areas, we have not yet seen a case of jaguar with distemper, but it doesn't mean that it cannot happen. So we have to be on the lookout for it. So this is, and the problem with this is that this is affecting, as I said, with Amur tigers, it's affecting species that are very endangered. They have very low numbers of these animals, and a disease outbreak could pretty much wipe them out. And this is already happening with different species, like with a very endangered species, the lions in Asia, in India, in the Gujarat Gir forest. This is a very small population of lions, of Asian lions that are not, there are different species from the African lions that we will see. And so it was very concerning that the lions were dying of distemper virus in this area. So this is something that we should be worried about and do more research to see what's going on. So now, Lilia, you want to tell us about your experience with the morbillivirus in marine mammals?
Yes, of course, because as you're saying in that, image, this virus has been causing some troubles from a long time ago. And the thing is that as the COVID virus is a RNA virus, so that means that these viruses can mutate a lot, and they can adapt to a new host very easily. So that kind of actions, you can see them very, as you can see in that image, can happen very, very often. So they started, as Sandra was saying, just as a dog disease, but as you can see, passing the time, it was isolated from other different hosts. And I'm going to be focusing on the marine mammal part of it. So this started pretty much in Russia. Then they had it in the Mediterranean, so you can see the purple circles. Then we are talking about marine mammals, whales, that they travel very long distances. So of course, with these animals traveling all around the world and in contact with different populations, and we know that marine mammals, they are very social animals. So we start to have outbreaks all over the world. But the most interesting thing is that when this virus enters to a population without antibodies against it, we can have, I don't know, 21,000 animals dead in a population. When 17 seals dead in the same population. So you start having huge numbers of mortality in the different populations. And as Sandra was saying, if your population is on I don't know what, an endangered species, we can have very, very bad numbers then. So as you can see in the box that is below on our left-hand side, those are the different mutations of the same virus, Canine distemper, only among marine mammals. So we have the dolphin morbillivirus, we have porpoises morbillivirus, we have whales morbillivirus. So in a very, very rapid scale. So it's really amazing. Next slide, please.
And yeah, and so this is very interesting because, as Lilia said, this basically started from the contact from a dog to seal.
Exactly. So this was the first interaction between a dog or some wild dogs that they were with Canine distemper. It occurred in the Baikal Lake in Russia, and they start having this contact with the seals. So the outbreak started there. Then these viruses start reaching other species of marine mammals, and the outbreaks start all over in the world. So what happens if we can avoid these kind of interactions? That, of course, if we see the picture, it's like, oh my God, it's so cute. Yes, it's a very cute picture. Of course, it's a very cute picture, but we have to think a little bit more outside the box and see the possible consequences of these kind of interactions that are not pretty normal, actually. Does it is right?
Yes. And like I said, I think it's very interesting because now we it's so easy to see and share videos and images, and seeing a jaguar interacting with a dog seems really cute, but actually it's not, and it could be very harmful for for every one of them. And also, it's not something that we want, right? Like, these animals belong in the wild, and that's where we want to see them, and we want to see them thriving instead of them being in the backyard or in the living room of someone, right? So yeah, so also another thing that we need to, we don't want to make you sad, but this is something we will have to talk about. So going back to the distemper outbreak in lions in Africa, something that happened after many years of research, and because there was a very specific outbreak that killed about 30% of the lion population. And there's been, oh, sorry, the picture is so bad. So there was this was supposed to be a picture I took in Malawi of a lion, but it went really bad. So what happened is that researchers saw that this outbreak, this major outbreak that was very bad for the lion population, was actually happened when there was a drought that caused a lot of the oh, sorry, I forgot the name in English. Antelope, a species of antelope, and Cape buffalo. Sorry, Cape buffalo died massively because of the drought, and they were infected with a parasite called Babesia. So the lions ate a lot of these parasites, sorry, the buffaloes with the parasites. And this caused them to have like a weak immune system. And that's why they were so susceptible to the canine distemper virus. So as I said, this is all connected. We have to see it this way because climate change is affecting our lives in many ways, but also it is affecting how diseases are happening. It can affect the distribution of these diseases. So for example, here in Mexico or in tropical countries, there's some diseases that are being affected, and they're actually happening in different latitudes because of climate change. And also this kind of like this perfect storm of having a drought that's affecting many species, for example, migratory species. It is also causing them to be, it's impairing them to get food enough. We see it especially for Arctic species like polar bears. We know that there are more polar bears that are suffering for less sources of food and less ice space because of climate change. So this also affects diseases. So it's kind of like what we want to convey is that these negative effects of our dogs and cats on wildlife are an addition to all the threats that are already for wildlife, right? So we have poaching and destruction of habitat. So all of that is already affecting wildlife species, and then this is also another negative thing for them. So, but there's the good news. So we don't want to depress you. We have really good news because there's a lot that we can do to prevent this. So
yes,
what can we do to help? So it may seem like, okay, I live here in the American continent, and there's nothing I can do to help lions in India or lions in Africa or tigers in Siberia. But actually, there is a lot that we can do. The first thing that we can do is to be a responsible caregiver or owner of our pets, the animals that we choose to spend our lives with. So how do we do this? And also I wanted to point out that responsible care for pets benefits more than pets. You remember when I was mentioning about the case for rabies in Mexico? So instead of just focusing on human health and saying we need to allocate all of these resources and money to prevent humans from getting bitten by dogs, that is very good. But what happened is that we did this intervention at the level of dog health, and it had many benefits. So this is also what we want to say here is that if we are responsible responsibly caring for our pets, it benefits our pets. So our pets are going to be healthy and happy, but also has a very positive effect on human health and well-being, because that means there are no stray dogs in the streets that are polluting with their poop that we are all breeding, and also they will not be a source of diseases for humans, but also for wildlife. So I would like for you to see that there's a lot of power on what we can do by being responsibly caring for our pets. And it has many benefits, not only for us. So this is what we can do to help. So one of the most important things that I want to say is that we need to be responsible, not only in while we're caring for our pets, but if we're thinking about adopting a dog or a cat, we need to think of it as a compromise for like 20 years, up to 15 to 20 years, depending on the pet. And so as long as we are taking, we're compromising, or sorry, we're committing to taking care of our cat and dog until the end of their lives, then this means there is a lot less abandoned pets, because sometimes it's like, you know, life happens and we get married, we move to another place or something, and then these animals get abandoned. And this is not something that we want for them to happen. We want to care for these animals for life, right? So this is one of the most important things that you can do. And also, so if we understand and know what our pets need, then we are better fulfilling their needs, right? So we know that cats need to scratch. We know that dogs need to bark, they need to sniff, they need to go on walks. So the more that we learn about their behavior and we fulfill their needs, they're going to be better taken care of. And of course, control their reproduction, spay and neuter is better for them, and also it reduces the amount of animals that are going to end up in the streets. And of course, health checks, vaccination and parasite control prevents diseases on them, but also diseases that could be transmitted to us, like rabies. Also, regular health checks. It's very important to take your pets to the vet, not only when they're sick, but also for regular checks, specifically for cats, because cats do not show that they're sick until they're very bad, because that's their behavior. So it's very important to take your cats and dogs to get checked. So in the case of cats, because we talk about how they don't need to go outside to hunt, but they need to express this behavior, there's something called catios that we're going to tell you a little bit more ahead, that are very good for them. It's kind of like the perfect win-win situation, because they are allowed to go outside, but they're safe, and also we're keeping wildlife safe. And about dogs, so one of the most important things that you can do to be a responsible owner is to walk your dogs on a leash and also keep them indoors at night, like Lilia was mentioning. So for dogs, basically, we need to have this basic socialization and education, so that we have balanced dogs that are expressing their behavior, but they're also happy and they have like every of their needs fulfilled. Play and walks are very important for dogs. They need to explore, they need to sniff, they need to interact with other dogs, and also they need to be, they have a good human-dog bond. And also proper diet is very important, as I was mentioning, that even though cats have this instinct to hunt and dogs don't need to hunt to eat, if we provide a proper diet to our dogs, then it's going to make them less prone to go hunting, because they have everything they need at home. And so for cats, key resources and catification. I don't know if you heard this word, catification, and it's called, it was coined by Jackson Galaxy. That's like it's named the cat daddy. So what we want is that for the home of our cats to be adequately enriched for them, so that they have everything that they need to express their behaviors. As I mentioned, play and predation behavior are very important for them. So, and actually there's something that we can do. We can provide them with toys and play with them every day, so that they can express this behavior. And as I mentioned, catios are the best for cats and wildlife, because they provide a safe space outside for our cats. Actually, you can, and what I like about catios is that it doesn't matter where you live. If you have a house, if you live in an apartment, if you live in a small flat, if you live in the country, or if you live in the city, then you can build a catio for your house. And Lilia has a very nice one for her cats that I will show you next. And so, but also keeping it's allowing your cats outside, but they're safe from being harmed, they're safe from being run over, they're safe from diseases, and we're also protecting wildlife because our cats cannot hunt them. And there's also some new technology that are called collar devices to save wildlife that are specifically designed so that cats are not hunting these wild birds, even if we allow them outside. And also, cats are obligate carnivores. They need meat to survive because they're hunters. So it actually has been studied lately that if we provide them a meat-based diet, then they do not need, it makes them less prone to hunt, and also it's better for their organism, for their health. So they need to eat meat. And so I'm going to show you a picture next of what the puzzle feeders are. Because cats are hunters and they need to eat like a hunter. This is something that has been invented by a veterinarian in the US. That it's a feeder that it has the shape of a mouse, and actually you can hide it and they can eat. They can simulate like they're hunting prey. So it's very good for them. So this is the Cario from Lilia's
My Cario. I'm a very good mom.
Yeah, she is. And why did you make a Cario? Who told you it was a good idea?
You, basically. I have
Oh,
Sandra
me?
and other veterinarian friends, but she's my favorite cat lady. So after a bad experience with one of my cats, and we have been moving in the last year a lot. So my cats needed a space for them. So my husband and I decided to build that catio. I know it's not the fanciest one, but we made it ourselves, and we are very proud because our cats are happy. They have a lot. They can be scratching the wood. They can be
Climbing.
playing, yeah, jumping, playing, or one to each other. So they have the food inside. They have everything they need, and the most important part is that space is only for them. So they of course they feel very safety in there, even when there are dogs around. So they know that inside of there nothing is going to happen. So they feel quite safe.
Exactly. That it's just honestly, I think it's the best invention, and it just what I like is that, like I mentioned, it doesn't matter if you live in a small flat or an apartment, because you can actually build a safe enclosure outside of your house, so the cats can enjoy outside and they're safe, and we're also keeping wildlife safe. And so
And they
these
are
are
not
some of
making a
the
mess in your
exactly. So this on the left, the one under, this is the one of the color devices that are used for, actually these are made of different colors, and some bird species can see it before cats bounce on them. So actually this can save a lot of birds' lives. And the one up here, these are the it's called the noble feeder, and I have it. And here in Mexico, we started selling it here in Mexico because it was very popular. And it's honestly, I think it's really genius because, as I mentioned, cats are hunters and they need to eat like they hunt, not just like have all the kibble and the dry food in their plates all the time. And this is very good for their health because they will not get fat, they will not get bored, and also it is very good for their mental stimulation. And also they can go and hunt and they can play with it, and it's really, really good for them. So there's a lot that we can do to keep our cats indoors and happy. So this is it for now. Thank you so much for staying with us, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Yes, Colby, we are ready.
You are ready. Well, ladies, thank you very much. That was very informative, very, very interesting, and a much different take on wildlife than what we usually hear in the Daily Dose. So thank you for your creativity and expertise here. Before we start the Q&A, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your own questions via the questions field in your control panel. We're a little bit past the hour, I recognize, so I'm going to try to lump some questions together. We had a number of different questions, ladies, about the transmission of some of the diseases you were talking about. So maybe to start, there was rabies. So can animals catch rabies? Like, for instance, you were talking about the leopards hunting dogs. If they consume then the dog meat, do they get rabies, or do they need to be bitten during a fight from the dog? How does that work?
That's yours, Sandra.
Yeah, actually, we were discussing it right before. So thank you for your question. And it's very interesting because so rabies is transmitted through the saliva and mostly through bites. So there's been some, actually, we consulted some biologists here in Mexico that work with rabies, and they say that it's a little bit hard to determine if an animal, for example, if the animal is not alive after being bitten. For example, if a leopard bites a dog and it doesn't survive, then the virus may stay in that body of that dog for a little while, because actually not a lot of viruses survive outside of the host for long. But it's more specifically if the dogs are, so it depends on how close contact they are. So if it's I don't know, several dogs that are they're being affected by a leopard, they're being bitten by a leopard, and then they survive and they go to other dogs, then there could maybe transmission. So it depends a little bit also on the transmission of the way of transmission of these diseases. For example, distemper is different than rabies, but yeah, there is a possibility. That's why we would rather not have this close contact of these animals.
Yeah, very good. And then you're sort of teasing into the follow-up question then, how are wild animals getting canine distemper? How does that happen? And why is that a problem now? Or is it a new problem? Has it always been a problem? We're just paying more attention to it?
It's really interesting question. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think that, like I said, I think it surprised everyone that wild cats were being affected. But now so that happened in the 90s, right? So after many years of studying it, what we've seen is that it affects only a certain genus of the Felidae family. So this means what the species that we've seen affected are only big cats, but not jaguars. So the species where we've seen it affects them, it's lions, tigers, leopards, not so much. Jaguars, we don't have any record yet for a jaguar that in the wild that has been affected by distemper, only in captivity. But pumas and all the other smaller cats like lynx, ocelots, margay, all of these species apparently are not affected. And this is very interesting because domestic cats, like there's been like an experimental infection of domestic cats with distemper virus, and they may get the virus, but they don't get any, they don't have any signs, or they don't have any like physical manifestation of the disease. And what happened with tigers and lions is that distemper virus causes seizures in dogs when it's really, it goes to the brain, and that's kind of like the final phase of the disease. And they were seeing lions getting seizures in the Serengeti, and tigers really sick, and it was just like dogs. So that is very particular. The distemper virus is a very interesting disease, and we just keep studying it. But this is something that is actually, we can consider it's new information, because we didn't know this like before the 90s. But actually, it's something that we're still studying to see why it is affecting some species and some aren't.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Could you remind the viewers what the name of the cat feeder is that looks like the large mouse? A few people are asking.
I
Yeah,
love that too.
actually,
Like the branding.
I know. It's called Duck Amphibies No Bowl Feeder.
They can contact you also
Yeah,
if you want. You have the Sandra's information, her email down there, and also mine. If you have further questions, we are happy to answer. We know that we are past the hour, but of course we are happy to answer all your questions. And if you want to know more about these kind of topics, of course we can invite another time to Sandra and go a little bit deeper if you want.
Okay, well, ladies, thank you very much for that offer. I'm sure some folks will take you up on it. Thank you again for being here today. Sandra, would you care to offer some closing comments or thoughts to folks here before we wrap up?
Yes. So basically, as you can see, I would like for you to take from this that there is a lot that we can do to help wildlife. And one of the things that we want to do is that we go to these places where remote places where, beautiful landscapes where we want to see these wildlife species in their habitats. And whenever you have the chance to go there, there's a lot that you can do also to help locally. So for example, if you go to Malawi, you can help these organizations and they are doing an amazing job. But also if you want to go with your pets to some wildlands around your house, then it's very important that you keep them safe, that the dogs are leashed, that the cats are leashed. Now it's more common to take your cats on a walk, but also you don't want to perturb, to do any, harm to wildlife. So the most important thing is that many actions that we can do as responsible owners have long-lasting effects on many other species. So if you think about it now, if anyone that has a pet now cares for them for the rest of their lives, then there will be a lot less animals in the streets. So do not underestimate that power that we have to change things when we commit to taking care of our pets.
Thanks, Sandra. Thanks for being here. And Lilia, would you like to offer a few closing thoughts of your own?
Yes, well, Sandra said pretty much the important information. But yes, guys, we know that you care about nature. We do also. That's why we are doing this kind of webinars, to give you some tips and to live in this world the more in a balanced way that we can, in a balance with nature, in a balance with our pets and with ourselves. So as you can see in that image, everything is working because we are all together and we work together. So thank you so much for your interest in these kind of webinars and these kind of topics. Thank you.
Well, ladies, thank you both very much for taking the time to present today. We all appreciate it. I'd like to also thank everyone who tuned in. Join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I will conclude today's webinar. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you.